I spell ALANBROWN. I'm here at Joint Base Elmendorf.
Break in, Alan, we're having difficulty hearing you. If you could just do a quick mic check for us, please.
Mic check. Someone's hot mic'd.
Alan, we can come back to you, but if will you work on your microphone? We can turn over to Alaska State Troopers.
Are we okay? Okay, I'm seeing notes that everybody can hear me okay. Excuse me.
Roger, understood.
Okay, so
everyone else seems to be hearing you okay. We'll work on our end, but Alan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just want to reiterate, or sorry, I got thrown off. So I'm here at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, which is just outside of Anchorage, Alaska, the Alaska National Guard headquarters. We've been participating in this search since yesterday evening. When we received notification, we launched an Alaska Air National Guard HC-130, as well as an Alaska Air National Guard HH-60 helicopter to go up to the area. The helicopter unfortunately had to turn around after a couple hours in flight due to some fairly severe weather. However, the HC-130 was able to make it up to the area and spend about 4 hours on scene doing a search, and then they returned early hours this morning. As we speak right now, an Alaska Army National Guard UH-60 is up in the air with a Nome-based air crew. They've been up and operating for the last couple of hours now in close coordination with the Coast Guard that still maintains the overall lead on this search. Additionally,
afternoon, a little after 4 p.m. when we were notified by the Rescue Coordination Center. Local troopers at both Unacleat and Nome posts reached out to Bering Air as well as others in the area and began to coordinate closely with ground search teams and the Nome search and rescue organizations. To the families and loved ones of those that are missing, just know that we are using every available resource and working closely with the other teams, and every request that we've made for federal or state assistance has been granted, and we continue to move forward working with our partners. Thank you. And NTSB as well. We coordinated with them, notified them early on. They were aware and have assets that were in the area as well as personnel continuing to move into the area to offer assistance and investigation.
Thank you, sir. And then with that, we'll turn it over to NTSB if they have anything they'd like to share before we turn it over to questions.
There we are. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Clint Johnson. I'm the chief of the NTSB office here in Anchorage, Alaska. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of where we are now, kind of where we're headed and where we've been. We were notified yesterday afternoon, right after this airplane went missing. Our investigator on call, Stacia Joyce, started gathering information, electronic information, radar, ADSB. We actually launched Stacia to Nome first thing this morning, so she's boots on the ground in Nome right now. We have a pretty large response coming from Washington, D.C., from various locations in the area, in the neighborhood of 9 people, various disciplines right now. But however, in this case, what we do is we kind of take a back seat for the most part to the rescue folks. We're just documenting right now, monitoring. Once the rescue is done, they hand the keys over to us and then we take it from there. But that's where we are at this point right now. And I'll turn it back to you folks.
Thank you, sir. And as I see, we have more than 400 people in the chat. So rather than use the raised hand function, I may ask that that members of the media please use the chat function, and I just identify your name there, so that way our team can call on you. So we'll open up to questions using the chat function.
Or you got it. All right, so first we'll start with Becky Bohr from the Associated Press.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to Lieutenant Commander. You mentioned some sort of item of interest. Is it part of a plane? Is it belongings? Can you describe that a bit more? And is this something that was discovered in open water or on ice?
So I apologize, ma'am. I do not know the answers to those questions. Hopefully within a fairly short amount of time, there will be more information about that. But it was literally just minutes before we came online that we were told that a item of interest has been found. The specifics beyond that, I can't really speak to at this time.
Fernandez, he's Alaska News Source.
So you can tell us right now, with family members being notified, who was on board? Do we know who was traveling together? Was this a group? Was this people traveling individually? Are we able to know who was on that flight?
We obtained the passenger manifest last night from Bering Air, and troopers with assistance from other agencies completed next of kin notifications. So we are aware of who it is, and next of kin has been notified, but those names have not been publicly released at this time.
Okay, and next we can go with Galia with ABC News. Okay, we can come back to that. If we can move on to Zach Wichter from USA Today.
He actually asked my main questions, but I'm just wondering if this is still considered a search and rescue mission or if this is morphed at this stage into a recovery mission.
So thank you for your question, sir. Speaking entirely from the United States Coast Guard's perspective, this is an active search and rescue case. So we are operating under the assumption right now that there are still people who are in a position to be assisted by the United States Coast Guard. We continue to have air assets overhead and are in close coordination with the local authorities, including the Alaska State Troopers, to provide potentially on the ice assistance to any persons who might be found. But at this time, we are still considering that this is an active search and rescue case, and we have no immediate intentions to change the status of the case in the near term.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, and then we'll move on to Davis Hovey with KMXT.
Afternoon. Thank you for presenting this call. My question is regarding the notice that we've been told from Nome Volunteer Fire Department that the Bering airplane was not communicating via emergency locator transmitter. Could you speak to that, and also the process the Coast Guard is using as it's flying grids and using technology to search for this plane without that ELT in play?
Sure. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that question. So as you had mentioned, every plane carries what's called an emergency locating transmitter. That is a device that if potentially it is exposed to seawater, sends a signal up to a satellite, which then coordinates or relays that message back to the Coast Guard that there's potentially an aircraft in distress. As you mentioned, there has been no ELT notifications to the United States Coast Guard. Why that has occurred or why that hasn't occurred is not something that we're entirely clear about. For the second part of your question, how the Coast Guard is sort of informing the search efforts going forward. So we do have, as a result of the Civil Air Patrol radar data that we were what we consider to be a fairly reliable last known position for that. So providing there, we are doing essentially expanding squares around that, and also using some pretty advanced modeling tools and equipment to determine, where ice may drift and where the water sort of may move, and that's going to inform whether or the direction of which our searches are going from here.
Okay, and then we can move to Chris Van Cleve from CBS News.
Hi there. Hopefully you can hear me. Two questions. One, can you give us a sense of what the weather conditions were like at around 3:18 when whatever that event was that happened? And do you have any information about, was this a tour group? Was this, what the point of that flight was?
So I do not know what the nature of the flight was yesterday. I do know that the weather yesterday was pretty challenging, especially once we got notification about the overdue aircraft and then trying to get resources into the area. The individual from the Alaska National Guard mentioned that their helicopter was unable to reach the area of action because of poor weather conditions. I can tell you right now, and this is holding since yesterday, the air temperature in the vicinity of the last known position is about 3 degrees. The sea temperature, depending on the status of the ice, is about 29 degrees. And what we're having is mixed ice conditions. So what we're calling shore ice, where it's not necessarily entirely firm, but not entirely broken up either. So I can't really speculate if it was whatever caused this plane to have this issue was a result of weather, but it's February in Alaska, and the weather has not been fantastic.
And then we can move on to the Nome Nugget.
Our question has been answered, so thank you anyways.
Okay. And we'll move on to Kelly Kramer from Fox News.
Hey, Kelly from Fox News. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Thank you so much for doing this in the middle of a important rescue mission here. Appreciate you taking the time. I know this question has been sort of asked a little bit. Hopefully you can tell us a little more about the people on the plane. Do we know the makeup, adults, children, and what type of trips do these planes usually take? Could this be a tourist plane? I guess we're trying to get an idea of who was on this plane. I know you're not releasing names, but anything you could give us would be great.
I'll just add that we're aware that it was all adults on the plane, and this is a regular scheduled commuter flight with Bering Air. It's a regular scheduled flight, and they're moving from Unalakleet to Nome in a normal fashion.
Okay, and then we'll move on to Charles C. Asking about current search weather conditions.
Question was just, what are the current conditions? Is it pretty clear? Are you guys able to see pretty well, or you still have reduced visibility?
So thank you for that question. The conditions have significantly improved this morning. So we're still dealing with, potential icing conditions for the aircraft, but as far as the visibility and the cloud cover are concerned, they are much more conducive at this point to locate any kind of items of interest than they were overnight.
And then we can move on to Bree Stimson with Fox News. I believe that question was answered. So we can move on to Zaz Hollander from Anchorage Daily News.
Can you hear me okay? Thanks for taking my question. I'm wondering if there were any transmissions from the pilot prior to that last transponder signal and whatever that sudden event was. Were there any indications of a problem on board?
Ma'am, we're unaware of any other indicators that the plane might have been experiencing any kind of distress prior to what we have from the radar forensics.
And what does the radar show exactly, if you can break it down a little bit for us?
So, like I mentioned, it shows the path of the aircraft moving across Norton Sound. And then, like I mentioned, it shows a rapid loss of altitude for the plane, and then a corresponding rapid loss in speed.
And can you tell us real quick what the altitude loss went from what to what?
I do not know that information off the top of my hand. I'm happy to go back and get some more higher fidelity data for you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yes, ma'am.
We can move on to Georgina Fernandez with Alaska News Source.
Sorry about that. Is there anything you can tell us for now about the pilot, their name, how many hours they may have had, and how long they were with Bering Air?
I am unaware of any, or excuse me, I'm not tracking any issues with the pilot. I would defer to the Alaska State Troopers for any insights about that question.
And we're not releasing names and don't really have particular information about the pilot's experience or history, and I would defer that to the NTSB investigation.
So that is going to be an integral part of our investigation. We have an ops group chairman that is going to be looking at everything that has to do with the pilot, the operation. But at this point right now, our main emphasis is on the rescue, but obviously that's something we're going to be looking at as the investigation unfolds.
Okay, and we can move on to Tracy from KTUU.
Was specific to the aircraft itself and anything we might know. It was obviously full, we understand, with passengers and up to maximum weight. Can you confirm that, and or the age of that aircraft and anything related to its experience in Alaska with previous recent issues or repairs?
Ma'am, I'm unable to speculate about the status of the aircraft, its weight, or any of those sort of particulars. I would again defer that to the NTSB once their investigation has begun.
Yeah, and again, kind of the same answer. I mean, those are the areas that we're going to be looking at very, very closely with a magnifying glass. The 208 typically is outfitted. It varies from operator to operator with 10 seats in it, so 9 passenger seats, 1 pilot. That's a standard configuration. As far as the weight, the takeoff weight, again, we don't know at this point right now, but those are areas that we're going to be looking very closely at.
Thanks, Clinton. Just to follow up, obviously the Nome airport, we were told, was in a holding pattern. That's something most of us know flying into there isn't that uncommon. But were there any particular reasons they were clearing? Was it heavy snow? Was it something that made that clearance difficult at that time, that was putting that plane in a holding pattern?
Not that I'm aware of at this point right now, but obviously we're going to be looking at that. At this point right now, we're not ruling anything out. man-machine environment. It's a process of elimination. Everything is on the table, very much in the performative stages of the investigation.
Okay, we'll move on to Charlie Cross.
I wonder if the Coast Guard can elaborate on the technologies being used and deployed on both the C-130 and the rotary aircraft.
Sure. So some of the technologies that are being utilized right now on both platforms is forward-looking infrared systems that can detect changes in temperature on the water surface. High optical or high resolution optical cameras. Something that we're doing at the very much preceding this call is deploying something called a self-locating data marker buoy, which is an object that will go into the water and that could potentially help us understand the flow of the water and the flow of the ice relative to the ocean's currents. So those are some of the things that the Coast Guard is using to aid in the search effort right now.
Okay, and then Aisha from ABC News. Okay, since we can't hear you right now, Aisha, we'll move on to the next question. SJ.
There, thank you. I was just wondering if local search and rescue needed additional people to help search.
At this time, based on the location and the conditions of ice and snow, no additional personnel requested. The local Nome search and rescue is involved, and if they have a need for additional, they'll make that request. But at this time, we're not requesting any additional personnel as far as volunteers.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll move on to Jen Watts from ABC News.
Question about the runway. I know that you've already answered the holding pattern, but is there anything you can tell us about why that runway was closed for a time? Were they clearing snow, or what was going on with that runway?
So I am unaware of anything about the runway in Nome. I would again defer to NTSB if they have any insights at this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have any information on that. Obviously, this event took place quite a ways from the airport. But again, we're going to be looking at all those different aspects. It's just very much on the preliminary stages right now.
Okay. We can move to Haley Lehman from Fairbanks Daily News.
Afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Haley Lehman from the Fairbanks Daily News Miner. The Federal Bureau of Investigation sent out a news release this morning that they are involved in the search and rescue. Can you share what their involvement is in the rescue mission at this point?
The Alaska State Troopers and FBI coincidentally held a meeting about pooling some equipment that they had that had potential for search and rescue use. We'd had that meeting this week. They offered that assistance, and our plan was to take them up on that offer if it was available. We've kind of on a pause of moving that equipment out to the area right now based on the most breaking information and that something had been located. So the FBI had offered their assistance to help us with the search and rescue.
And if I could follow up, do you mind sharing what equipment they offered to help in the mission?
It's equipment that primarily has other uses, but does have potential to help locate someone in a search and rescue situation. And I would just refer you to them for additional information on that technology.
Thank you.
And I think we have time for one more question. So we're going to make one more question, and then if you have additional questions, please, either myself or one of the public affairs representatives from the other agencies on board will be there to assist you. So one more question then, please.
Okay, we'll move to Ms. Taylor from CBC News.
Oh, my question's already been answered. Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, and I think I missed Dana Griffin from NBC News. Did we already get you?
Hi. Yeah, thanks so much for calling. So you kind of answered a little bit, but I just want to go back and clarify. Did the pilot ever achieve that holding pattern? And if so, how long was the pilot in that holding pattern?
Again, ma'am, I have no insights onto the intended flight path or anything to do with the holding pattern with Nome Airport or what might have precipitated it. The Coast Guard's involvement really began when the aircraft became overdue, and any questions related to the routing of that, I would defer entirely to either the FAA or the NTSB once they've completed their investigation.
And folks, thank you very much for your questions. Understanding that this is still an active search, we request you please follow USCG Alaska on X. That's where you're going to see some up-to-date information. My team and all our partner agencies will be looking into what the search assets on scene are actively looking at right now. So we will be pushing out updates later today. And stay tuned for those. If you do have additional questions, you can send them to USCG Alaska at uscg.mil. Again, that's USCG Alaska at uscg.mil. And again, if you're looking for one of the other partner agencies, their public affairs representatives can help you out. Thank you very much for attending today, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks, folks.